Before the video begins, I want to say that I have a Patreon where you can donate to help this channel grow, and also where I have an Instagram where I post almost daily and keep in touch with all my fans, so you can personally DM me and I will respond to you. So go follow me on there and keep updated with my personal life. Thank you, and let's start the video.
Welcome to the world of Tales from the Trip.
3 days ago, I had the most horrifying experience in my entire life. Me and my friend hadn't smoked marijuana in months, marijuana being the only thing I had ever done, and we decided to buy some magic brownies from a friend. The girl who sold them told us the only thing in the brownies was marijuana. We didn't really think they were going to give us any more than a buzz, so we ate them about an hour before my mom was supposed to pick me up. Bad fucking idea. I'm not really sure about the time, but I think about 15 minutes after taking them and realizing they did nothing for us, we decided to go home. I walked up to the street my mom was supposed to pick me up at and started reading my book. I don't know how much time had passed, but suddenly I began to feel intensely high. The cars would pass and the whoosh sound they made would be delayed. I was like, shit, just what I needed. My mom is gonna be here any minute. I got up and started walking down the street in the direction of my house in hopes I would wear it off. It just got worse. I started feeling like if I just pulled the upper half of my body a little higher, I could have had an out-of-body experience. I kept trying to snap back to reality so I could fake it in front of my mom. My mom drives up minutes later, and I've never felt so high in my life. Everything looks so different. I get in the car and complain about feeling sick, and she just starts talking and driving. Suddenly, I feel like she is going down the same street she just went down, and I get this horrifying sense of deja vu, like sometime in the past she went down the same street twice to check if I was high and see if I noticed what she was doing. To my knowledge, this has never actually happened. I asked her, "Hey, why are you going down the same street twice?" And she looked at me funny, and she's like, "I didn't go down the same street twice." At this point, I feel so weird. She's like, "Are you alright? What's the matter?" We arrive at the house, and I go into the backyard, and oh my god, it totally hits me. I'm sitting on this swing thing we have, and my mom comes out to look at me. I have absolutely no distance perception whatsoever, so she looks like this little person coming towards me, slowly getting larger and larger. The backyard is ridiculous looking. Everything is wrongly proportioned. I try to explain what the backyard looks like, but I can't seem to find words. The backyard starts splitting, like instead of being a full picture in front of me, there are two halves and they branch out towards me when I turn my head from side to side. In my mind, I'm screaming, "What the fuck is this?" My mom asked me what the hell is the matter, and I feel like I have no choice, so I'm like, "I took a marijuana brownie." And she's like, "This is not marijuana." And suddenly it hit me that my brownie must have had something else in it, and I got so scared. My mom and sister take me inside to my sister's room, and our house looks like it's in a circle. Everything is curved out. Before I know it, I'm being driven to the hospital. My mom asked me to take my gum out, and I do. And then I start moving my tongue around the inside of my mouth. And when I do this, the entire scene in front of me gets this blurry line in the middle of it, and I can hear myself licking that line, defining it, creating it. I cannot explain how weird this was. But the worst part is coming. I came into the hospital, and they admitted me. For a while, they were trying to get me to talk, but for some reason, I couldn't do that. And then, like magic, it all became fucking hell. Everything I saw was something I had seen in my memories years ago, or in different lifetimes. The walls, the curtains, the sounds of the hospital, everything. The nurse took me in to take a pee test, and that's when it really hit me. All that I was experiencing was a hell that had been created for me. All of it had happened before, and I knew that now I was going to be here for eternity. I started to cry, but she told me no crying, but it was so real. The things she was saying, the way the bathroom looked, the way she looked. I felt as though that all of this happened to me before. I knew it was real because the deja vu was so incredibly strong. I remember looking up at my sister's face and seeing her saying, "Astrid, talk to me." And deep within myself, I knew that she was only a simulation for the hell that had been created. I was meant to live in this endless cycle of horrifying deja vu for the rest of eternity. This is going to sound really self-centered, but I believe that every soul that had ever existed has lived the life of Astrid, experiencing the same things as me, and made the choice whether or not to take the brownie, which would determine their destiny forever. It's so ridiculous, but at the time, I believed it so much. I realized that all the people that had talked to me about drugs in the past were mere simulations to test my weakness and temptation. I mean, I'm not even really religious at all. The scariest part was that everything felt as though it had sickeningly occurred before, and that its purpose was to occur again and again and again in this never-ending cycle of torture. I try to explain this to some people after, and it's really obvious that you have to experience it yourself to understand the horror. So I'm guessing what I took was LSD. I was still feeling weird the next day, not like hallucinating or anything, but I just felt really weird. I don't think I'll ever know what it was for sure. The ER people got a blood test, but they said it's difficult to detect other drugs besides marijuana in the system. All I know is that I've done marijuana quite a few times in the past, and this was not marijuana. I just wonder if the circumstances were different. Maybe it wouldn't have been a bad trip. Anything to do with doctors scares me now. I went to the doctors for a checkup the next day because my mom was being a paranoid freak, and I saw the white walls of the doctor's office with cheesy little kid wallpaper on it. And I got this wave of terror, but it passed in like a second. I'm scared to even do marijuana after this. I just can't ever know exactly what I'm getting with drugs. My advice to everyone: expect the unexpected when dealing with this crap. I've always wanted to try LSD, but I never thought it would be this way. Hey, I just want to interject after that story. He said it was laced with LSD. I don't think so. I think he just took a high dose of an edible. That's just my 2 cents on it. Alright, let's go on to the next story. This was a mostly bad trip that was the culmination of a myriad of unfortunate things and bad decisions that happened in conjunction with one another. This trip was also the first and only time I have had a full-on trip from weed and edibles, and due to the following circumstances, I learned that one can actually have a full-blown trip from THC. I was 31 at the time and had many previous experiences with mushrooms, acid, and marijuana, and was very familiar with trip reports, and that probably helped the situation not become even worse than what it was. I was with my fiancée and her family for a weekend getaway on Lake Erie. It was the week after Christmas, and we rented a house on the lake and decided to have a chill, relaxed vacation despite the freezing temperatures outside. My fiancé's brother had a few marijuana plants at his home and had made some infused coconut oil from them. I had made my own batch a year prior with his plants, and it was super potent. He asked me Saturday afternoon if I wanted some in my hot chocolate, which he was going to have for himself and his wife, and I said sure, but I didn't want to be too messed up for the evening, and so I told him, just a small to medium amount. Mind you, I never smoke and do edibles probably once a month, so I did not have much tolerance built up like my fiance's brother and his wife. They made some hot chocolate for the three of us and dosed my mug. The first of many bad decisions was that for some reason, despite not having eaten since 11 a.m. or noon, I drank the entire mug in a matter of 2 to 3 minutes. This was around 4 p.m., so I didn't have much in my stomach and took it all at once, and the fact that it was liquid and not in solid form must have been the reason it affected me so quickly. We decided to play a game, and after about 15 minutes or so, I felt myself getting a bit nauseous and dizzy. Then everyone got up and went to the kitchen to start preparing dinner, and eventually I was able to get up and follow them. But I felt confused, and even though we were staying in a rental house, I immediately felt like I didn't know where to go and did not understand my surroundings and had to support myself on the banister to get up the stairs to go towards the kitchen and had blurry vision to boot. I knew I had to sit down, so before I got to the kitchen, I went into the room where I had slept the night before and sat down on the bed and started immediately crying because I didn't know who I was. I was experiencing ego loss after 30 minutes of ingesting this THC oil and would keep telling my fiancé this over the course of the night. My fiancé ran in to see what was wrong and sort of helped me get through that moment by quizzing me on who I was and who she was, which I was able to do in terms of naming people, but still didn't quite understand who everyone was. I decided I needed to fight this mental feeling, something I would not have done had I had an experienced trip sitter with me. I jumped in the shower and had the cold water running for 5 minutes, thinking it would wake me up and get me out of that delirious mental state. Unfortunately, it didn't work and just made me cold. Then, my fiancé said I should come eat dinner with everyone and that would make me feel better. Mind you, I now had zero appetite and was afraid because her parents are very conservative in terms of drug use. I started to realize I was in for the long haul, and despite not being prepared whatsoever to trip with my fiance's family this weekend, you have to roll with it. I proceed to sit down at dinner with everyone, and they could see something was wrong with me, also because they had heard me crying. I was afraid because I could tell my fiance's mom was very angry at my fiance's brother for putting me in such a weird funk, and there was a clear tension going on at the dinner table, which additionally put me in a not so good mindset for my trip. Then things start to get real at the table, and this was probably 45 minutes after I drank the hot chocolate. I start floating about 3 feet above my body and proceed to tell everyone, I'm watching myself from here, moving my hand behind my head by about a foot. I can't eat dinner at all, so I start staring at the clock on the wall, and after 4 minutes, which felt like an hour, I exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's only been 4 minutes. I can't believe this. This is not good." I got up and headed outside to go for a run to clear my head, but my fiancé chased me down and eventually allowed me outside, but only to run up and down the road a few times before making me come back inside as it was 0 degrees, and she didn't want me wandering off and getting hit by a car or having someone call the cops on me. In hindsight, this was probably a smart decision. However, I really wonder if I could have made myself feel more relaxed and comfortable by going for a short run. I don't remember much after that, other than being afraid or maybe just intimidated by my fiance's brother's dog that I normally adore and love playing with. I also distinctly remember sitting in the living room with everyone later on, after I had eventually calmed down enough to have the normal, marijuana-intense giggles with my fiance's brother and his wife, who were also now both baked, while my fiance's mom was making fun of us, and also annoyed at us for ruining the family vacation by just being so high that we couldn't even function. I should also note that while my fiance's brother and his wife had also taken the same amount that I had, possibly even more, he had simply had a night of being super high, and his wife, though she had a bit of an emotional roller coaster of a night and had also started crying in front of everyone, she did not have the trip-like symptoms that I did. At around 10 or 11, we all went to bed, so this was about 6 hours after initial ingestion. As anyone who has tripped before knows, you can often feel feverish and get chills. This happened to me, and the next step in bad decisions made that night was that I decided to sleep in a sweatshirt under the covers, despite being in a very warm room where the night before I was fine sleeping naked under a thin sheet. I got up to go to the bathroom at around 4 or 5 a.m., and before getting back into bed, I proceeded to faint, something I have never done in my life. I hit the floor and immediately started crying, something I also never do, and now had done twice in 12 hours. Everyone ran into the room to see what was wrong, and they all started freaking out. I told them I felt very warm, and they took off all my clothes except for my underwear, and I am profusely sweating. I'm positive it was just my temperature that made me faint, but I was definitely still high. My fiance's mother proceeded to call 911, probably a rational decision in her mind, although everyone was delirious because they had just been woken up in the middle of the night. I still had the right mindset to say no, but at that point, it was too late and the paramedics were on their way. The paramedics arrive and I'm pacing back and forth, basically having a panic attack while still high. They take my vitals, which were fine, except my heart rate was at 120 beats per minute. I was basically forced by everyone there to go to the emergency room, a place I had never been. They strapped me into a stretcher and put me into the back of the ambulance, and I realized that I was still super high, because watching the lights fade away out the back of the ambulance as we left blew my mind. We get to the ER and they give me an IV, and despite that, I still had super bad cotton mouth and just kept asking for water, which annoyed me because it took forever for the nurses to help me. The doctor asked if I had taken anything, and I was coherent enough to say no. Probably not the right answer in hindsight, because once my fiance's family realized there would be no repercussions to telling the truth, they told the doctor about the weed. One thing I distinctly remember from the emergency room was my fiance coming up to me and whispering in my ear, "Are you still high?" I didn't even respond because at that moment, over 13 to 14 hours after drinking the hot chocolate, I realized I was still tripping hard off this little THC drink. The doctor loaded me up with a mixture of Xanax and Benadryl, or the hospital equivalents, and I passed out for an hour or two. They released me, and we went back to the rental house, and I slept for another hour or so. I woke up, had breakfast, and I felt fine. Meanwhile, everyone else had been packing and cleaning, and as soon as I got my stuff, it was time to check out of this house. Needless to say, it was not an enjoyable goodbye and not a fun departure, as everyone else was exhausted and angry at each other. I did not expect to be able to trip off of cannabis oil. I was not expecting to trip at all that weekend. I was not in a safe space and was surrounded by people who I didn't know very well and who were not versed in psychedelics. I did not have a trip sitter to tell me to go with the ego loss feeling. I should not have drank that hot chocolate so quickly and should have not done it on an empty stomach. I shouldn't have gone to bed with so many layers on. My fiance's brother didn't realize my lack of tolerance and or the strength of his stuff. My fiance's mother should not have immediately called 911. All these things led to a bad trip. However, it still could have been worse, and thankfully, I had the knowledge and prior experience to deal with most of what was thrown at me. Furthermore, looking back on it, I'm still amazed at what happened that night. And honestly, I am in awe of the ego loss element and out-of-body experience from THC. I have smoked marijuana many times since I was 15 years old and have never been able to get high. Based on my tolerance to prescription medications, alcohol, etc., I determined I just had a very high tolerance for things. I don't enjoy smoking, but I have heard weed can help with migraines, and I was interested in trying some edibles to see if it could help the pain. I obtained a 100 milligram weed brownie, and having never used edibles before, I asked an acquaintance, who I thought knew more about weed than he actually does, how much of it should I eat? He knows my usual high tolerance for things, and he told me to eat all of it. This was a very bad thing to do. I had a normal day, ate a regular meal for dinner, and about 2 hours later at 10:30, I ate the 100 milligram brownie. I felt nothing until 11:30 p.m. 11:30 p.m. I suddenly started feeling strange. I was slightly dizzy. I felt like 10 minutes had passed in the span of 30 seconds, and I had some trouble concentrating. I wasn't worried and was just getting a grasp on feeling weird. 11:40 p.m. I lost all sense of time. 2 minutes would pass in between a conversation I had with my husband, and I thought it happened 30 minutes ago. My concentration was worsening, and I was beginning to feel really dizzy and starting to get hot. 11:50 p.m. I started feeling nauseous, and I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet very well. I decided to lay down and thought the feeling would pass. 11:55 p.m. This is when it seemed like the floodgates opened. Everything spiraled out of control. I sat up and suddenly had to vomit. I was very hot and starting to sweat. Dizziness was out of control, and I couldn't look at anything for more than a second. My eyes were very sensitive, and my concentration was completely gone. I felt as if I wasn't in my own body. That is, until I needed to retch again. 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. This was the peak of my experience, and the worst I have felt in my entire life. I was passing out intermittently between vomiting and crying. My entire body was numb, and I couldn't move from my position on the floor, hovering over a trash can. I felt like I couldn't even concentrate enough to breathe. I was worried I would stop breathing and not be able to help it. I wasn't having any hallucinations or paranoid thoughts other than the ones related to the way I was feeling. I couldn't open my eyes to look at anything, and it was an extreme chore to put together a sentence. I vomited more than I even thought was possible, and the retching was so strong, I thought my head was going to explode. 2 a.m. I was finally able to sleep around this time. I stopped throwing up, and I was somewhat less dizzy. It started getting easier to control my breathing, and instead of being hot, I was suddenly freezing. I still could not move from where I was sitting. 6 a.m. I awoke to see the sun starting to come up behind the blinds and found that I was still on the floor. I was able to open my eyes finally and look around the room without it spinning out of control. I could concentrate again and could feel my body enough to move. I had an excruciating headache, but I was able to crawl into bed. I felt hungover, and the headache lingered well into that evening. I didn't feel like I was totally starting to recover until about 24 hours after I initially ingested the THC brownie. For the next 2 days afterward, my entire body was sore, and it even hurt to cough. I have given birth twice, the first time being all natural and pain med-free, and this brownie eating experience trumps that as the most horrifying thing I've ever experienced. I like smoking pot, but I have grown wary of eating it. Here's why. When eaten, it comes on slower and lasts longer. You don't know what you've got until it's too late. Usually, it makes for a nice day, yet sometimes it feels heavier, but not enlightening. Worse, it can be dangerous, as I had to endure twice. My new lady friend and I should have stopped at the simple joint we shared in a quiet spot near the entrance of the colorful yearly festival. Smoking pot is still illegal in our state, hard to hide, and we didn't want to risk offending the festival. So along with lunch at about noon, we each ate a brownie from a batch I had made last year from a plant in my yard. All was well until about an hour later when it started to hit my new friend. She is small and sensitive, so I had given her less than half of what I took. I had tried various sizes from the batch since last fall, so I felt I knew the dose. Her eyes looked dilated and depressed, not focused. She then started descending into the worst case of a THC overdose I have ever seen. It was worse than a notorious birthday party of years past when someone brought a new untested batch of pot brownies. Most people had one, but I had two. Turns out, one was about 8 doses worth of THC. Everyone got sick. Some slurred their words and couldn't walk well. The 2 bathrooms were constantly busy with small groups helping each other expel explosively from both ends. People were screaming. It was the worst party ever. Funny now for the survivors, only in retrospect. We all resolved to go easy with new batches of edible pot. It's too bad I didn't heed that lesson. I wanted to augment the already wonderful experience at the fair. Not wise. Buddha says, desire is the mother of suffering. How true that was for us. I was okay, mildly high and dry mouth, but my dear friend went into painful hallucinations between blackouts. I tended to her as best as I could, trying to reassure her that it will pass. She had trusted me, and though I couldn't figure out then why or how, I knew it was my fault. "What is this shit?" she screamed. "What did you give me?" "It's the same as I had, only less," I replied. She would go into vacant sleep, only to emerge with her face contorted, her eyes dilated, hard fright in her expressions. She went in and out of consciousness, dipping too low, coming out only to, thankfully, in a difficult way, puke 4 times. I summoned the fair's clinic staff. We took her to the doctor. It was horrible, very hard on her. I was overcome with concern and shame. I barely noticed the bare-breasted teenage girls doing yoga just past her as she went through this whole situation. After a few hours resting in the noisy clinic, she had purged and rested enough to regain her legs and walk out. All I saw were shoulder-to-shoulder crowds to maneuver through. We left the fair and went home. I barely saw or even remember the colorful and fun fair. Later, I remembered last year making batches of oil for the brownies, but cooking one down too much. A sticky goo didn't disperse evenly like the rest of the oil. There was ample amounts of THC in the rest of the brownies, as I had experimented with it a few times since, but perhaps there was a sticky superdose in hers. It was one of the worst, most frightening and shameful experiences of my life. I was stupid and irresponsible to not toss that sticky clump out of the mix, or to at least only give her a little piece, if any at all. It would have been a beautiful day had we not eaten those damn brownies. She and I are okay now, but I have a confirmed wariness towards edible marijuana. It comes on too slow, so the dose is a mystery until it's too late. Smoking is faster, brighter, and very hard to overdo, as I have tried many times, but it's also harder to hide. So, once again, our laws are alienating us from our police, our festivals, and our would-be should-be safer habits.